Hey guys, Saf here with another Raid Shadow Legends video, and in today's video what I want to talk about are things that you can currently do to start preparing your account for the city of Sintranos. Now, we don't have any information yet in terms of the exact details. We're still waiting for what's next video. God knows when we're going to get this. It feels like it's overdue by about a week right now. And really, it's kind of like we have to assess and guess what we're going to see. We've seen lots of social media posts. We've had the Raid Digest. I gave a video recently that probably, I'll be honest, maybe I was on the little bit of a negative side. And I do take some people's points around some of the sort of, not so much elitist attitudes, but maybe I was a little bit too focused on my own desires and my own wants rather than what the community wants. But what I want to do in this video is basically review what I was saying in that video, review all the information we've had since that video, and also then give you 3 tips that you can do right now to start preparing for this new major content piece that we've been waiting for a long time. So like I said in the last video, I was pretty critical about the issue that I thought in terms of the difficulty curve, because essentially what they said is that the difficulty of the new content, the maximum difficulty of the new content, could be compared similarly to hard Doom Tower as far as difficulty in game modes can be compared, because obviously there's different game modes, which means that pretty much we're looking at sort of monster levels around about 300 here, actually levels around about 350, 400. And my main concern was, would that be a challenge for someone like me who's got so many champions, right? We got loads and loads of champions here. That just doesn't really have, like, you've given us so many stats, right? And that was my concern. We've had a lot of stat blow. I've got loads of champions. I've done so many champion training events because I have to do them for every fusion. Is this a difficulty curve that is sufficient enough to satisfy the end gamer? But what I think a lot of people didn't realize I was trying to say was, I'm so glad that there is a normal mode. I'm so glad that they've said that it's going to be accessible for every player after level 50, and that it should be pretty accessible by the sounds of how they've talked about it for anyone in that normal mode. My only concern is, will it curve enough to do it? Now, one of the things we need to keep in mention is the wording that they said in their Raid Digest, which was that there would be different battles imposing different restrictions. Now, what I think they basically mean by that is it's going to be like secret rooms, where in the Doom Tower here, you can see we get these special rooms and it will give you a special requirement or limitation to be able to beat that room. Now, some of these can be absolutely toxic. Like, I think one of these rooms here, this one, Force HP Champions, is actually a lot better now that we've had champions like Timid added into the game, and there's Husks in here. Some of them are like Force Rare Champions. Like, here you go, Rare HP Champions. Like, we're basically looking at Painkeepers. And if you look at what you've got here, it's just Painkeepers. Awful. 153 turns or 143 turns. The fastest one globally is 78 turns. It's absolutely brutal, some of these secret rooms. So there is a concern that we might have some of those. I don't think it's going to be as restrictive. I think it's going to be a little bit more. What I would imagine they're going to do is follow the model similarly to this, where there will be some sort of conditions, but they'll be a little bit more expanded, right? So maybe it'll be like, you can only use them from this faction overall, or maybe it could be alliance only. Maybe they'll say it has to be like legendary champions only. The other thing they did mention was that would be some aspects of the floors, not all, but some of them, and they're optional, of awakening. So really, the first thing you need to do is kind of look at your roster and see if you've got good coverage across all the things that would be obvious, right? So it's quite obvious based on the fact that we just had a Shadow King Arena tournament that there will be some restrictions on factions, because it's obvious, it's the easiest thing you can do. There's likely to be some restrictions about affinities and rarities potentially. Maybe there's even other wild things, but certainly I would look at my faction and kind of go, do I have a good coverage? Is there like a champion that I've had from a specific faction that I've gone, I don't really need to use them right now because I've got like a powerful nuker from another faction, that if you're doing the champion training, it might be worth doing. Certainly that's what I will be looking at right now in terms of champion training. I'm looking at here going, okay, well, normally my nukers would be Baron or Constantine, but what if I can't use Bannerlords and Sacred Order? What if I need to use a nuker from Dark Elves? Do I have a nuker in this faction that's going to cover me? Well, I have a Foley, I have a Marinix. Maybe I need to invest in those. I just did a bit of testing, and I'm doing testing on Marinix in Hydra, so that might satisfy me for that area. Maybe if I look in Orcs, do I have champions here? I have Val, I have Nogdar. I'm probably okay for Orcs. Maybe I need to look in Silver Watchers. Maybe you've been sitting on Mr. Adaithi. Maybe now it's time for him to come out of the vault and actually level him up. So just take a look at all of your factions. Are you sitting on any champions that you think would actually be very valuable? Upgrade them, level them up, get them ready. That's tip number 1. Look at your factions and see if there is any gaps. And if there are gaps and you have champions that can fill the gap, specifically the usual type of champions. Do I have a damage dealer? Do I have a debuffer? Do I have a healer / reviver? Do I have a turn meter booster? Not every faction is going to have all these features because, you know, some factions are much more fleshed out in terms of what they can do than others. Like Lizardman here, you can see the epic pool is quite bad. There's very, very limited options in the epic pool for things like turn meter boosting, things like actual raw damage dealers. You've got a lot of poisoners. I think probably Ziichi is the best damage dealer here. Maybe a little bit of like Basilisk, but it's not crazy damage over there. It's only until you get up to the legendaries of Lizardman that it gets strong. Now, hopefully they're not going to do something crazy like you can only use epic Lizardman like they do with Secret Rooms, because I think that's very restrictive. Hopefully it'll just be more like you must use attack Lizardman, or you must use like Lizardmen that are like, I don't know, of a specific affinity, perhaps. Maybe they'll even do things like you can use Lizardmen or Skinwalkers, like you can only use the Galian Pact. I really doubt they're going to go and just repeat Secret Rooms. There's going to be some differences there because I think otherwise that's pretty stale, right? And it's also very restrictive. If you get stuck where you can't go 3 different ways or something, because they've said it's a non-linear path, which makes it sound like you can go any way you want. If you get stuck and you can't get past a certain stage because it requires you to have very specific champions and it's that pool of champions is so small, that could be quite poor. So I don't think they'll do that. That's what I would suggest. The first thing I would do is look at all of the different, look at my roster and have a look. Have I got good coverage for those roles? Now, the second thing I would start doing, if I have the opportunity to, is farm Iron Twins. Iron Twins, you're going to need Awakening for some of these stages. Whether or not it blocks your progression through Sintranos, I don't know. We don't know the details, but certainly it sounds like there's an element of Awakening that's going to be involved. It's a fair probability that some sort of like Awakening passives that we see on all the other bosses are going to exist as well, because they are trying to drive you towards the Awakening system. So start looking, and if you're not doing it, farm Iron Twins. I did a video recently where I looked at all of my monthly allocations for where I got my souls from, right? I was doing the top Hydra chests all the time. I was doing the events. I was doing Iron Twins as much as I could. And what I found out is Iron Twins is still about 75% of all of your soul stones. It's a very significant proportion of your income. Even though events do, supplement it, Hydra does supplement it, Iron Twins is where a lot of your stuff comes from still. So I would start farming this. You can see this is my normal farm team. We have the Geomancer strategy. It's very hard if you don't have Geomancer, but there are teams out there that can do it without Geomancer. There's plenty of videos that other creators have made around like triple Painkeeper unkillable teams, Helicath unkillable teams. You don't have to use my team here. I just have built this team because I didn't have enough Painkeepers at the time, and it does work really well. You can see I can run it here in the background when we're talking about this strategy. The idea basically is that we can keep resisting and try and stop the Iron Brand as much as we can, and we've got the Aox extending the HP burn as long as we can so that we can keep proccing the Geomancer passive. It's all about abusing and forcing the boss to take turn meter so that he keeps attacking the Geomancer. That's the strategy here. Aox is also very good because he has a decreased attack. So as long as we keep extending these buffs, it's really good for this strategy. You can see the burn's about to fall off, but hopefully we should be able to get it back on there and extend it. You just want to try and keep the burn on as long as possible because Geomancer's passive is the only thing that doesn't proc this guy's passive when you do lots of damage. It's the only thing that I found. Everything else, Brimstone, Poisons, direct damage, War Master, the whole thing, everything else, unlike Ice Golem, will proc his passive except for the damage that Geomancer does with his passive. Now, my run here is pretty quick. Sometimes it can be a little bit shaky if we do happen to cross the HP threshold and he wipes the buffs. Can't really control that. It's also very important that I have decreased attack up when we enter his final phase like now. As long as the decreased attack is up, this should be a pretty quick and clear run. When he gets into this last form, he actually procs Geomancer's passive even more because he's attacking so many times. You'll see we'll probably one-shot him now once we finish this next attack because he's just going to whack up. Oh, the HP burn fell off. That's why Aox is good, but he's also rough because he only extends 2 debuffs. So we got unlucky there. but hopefully we should kill him off. There goes all that damage. So 1 minute 29 run, start farming Iron Twins, because you will need Awakening at some point in the Sintranos. It might not be straight away, it might not be for a couple of weeks, but you will want to awaken them. Now you can see I'm a bit of a hoarder, and this is like really good because I feel like with all of the different restrictions and things that they could potentially do, I feel like I've got a pretty good coverage of all of the potential champions. Because what I personally believe is I tend to awaken all of these rare champions at some point, right? I'll keep souls. I don't really keep duplicates unless they're really worth it. But you can see I'll end up awakening all these champions at some point. Because you can see the value of selling these are nothing. You might as well have a 4-star rare than get 6 coins, which is, it's not even like half your way to 1 essence, right? You need 300 tier 2 essence to get a 6-star legendary soul. That is like 15,000 coins. The exchange rate is just poor. I'd rather have more awakened champions than just have the chance of that in the future. So I tend to keep all these things, awaken them when I can, and that has led to me having quite an awakened roster. I think I did the numbers on the optimizer. You can do this as well. So what you can do, which is quite cool, is you can come to the optimizer and you can actually pull in all your account information. So if you want to know like how efficient you have been with awakening champions, how many awakened options do you have, you can come in here, you can use the basic filter. So on my champions tab here, you can see I've got 772 champions. Of those champions, I basically have around 278 at rank 6 currently. And of those, I have around about 219 that have some form of awakening. And if we look at sort of high awakening, I've got about 25 here. You can see I've got a lot of rare champions. We have a 6-star boltsmith. We have lots of different things. So I've got a very, very, very deep awakened pool. Like 80% of my rank 6s are pretty much awakened. So when I'm hearing the words, you will need awakened champions, I'm far less stressed because I've hoarded a lot of souls. But like they said in the Raid Digest, it's not going to be per champion, it's going to be per team. So all you need to make sure is you actually start considering the possibility that this, for example, I don't know, let's pick a random champion here that most people wouldn't even think. Charney, for example. Maybe Charney is really good for some content in this new area. Well, if you have a 3-star soul, instead of selling them every time you get them, maybe worth holding on to them in case you need to awaken them, because it could be that's the star requirements you need to complete one of the floors in Sintranos. So that's what I would definitely recommend you do. You can see I haven't really cleaned out my duplicates in a while. I generally don't keep duplicate souls. So like this Bone Keeper, I will just sell the lower ones. And what I need to do is actually go through and figure out which ones I've already awakened. I think I've already got a 4-star Taurus, for example. We don't need 2 Selenias here. And we don't need 2 Prosecutors. So there's obviously cleansing I can do here, but having the awakened options here will add so many more options. When you get to those difficult floors in the Soul Cross region, which looks like it's the end game part of Sintranos, where likely there's going to be like a really horrific secret room, I would guess. One of these floors are going to be so hard that we're going to have to really think about how we can do it. So that's tip number 2. Start thinking about souls. Start doing Iron Twins if you have the energy and you can do it. If you haven't got Geomancer, it will be a lot slower, but there are options out there. If you want to find some teams, go check out the Optimizer. It has team suggestions for Iron Twins. Maybe it can find a team in there for you, and then you can farm it. If you can get it to 100% chance, it is 120 energy a day. I wouldn't recommend you buy the keys unless it's Sunday. I only ever buy keys for this with gems if it's on a Sunday, because all of the odds and the rewards get doubled. So you basically get double the reward for the energy you spend. It's the only time I buy keys with gems. Just do your 6 a day, start getting some stones. It does help for even events like now. We've got the Winter's Path here. Having some extra soul stones will save you a couple of, like maybe 1,000 energy from training, which is really big. So that's point number 2. And the final point I want to talk about is the reflections of the bosses. They've basically said that there's going to be, I think there's going to be a new boss by the looks of it. And then there's going to be reflections of bosses, and they're going to be duo bosses, right? 2 bosses in one encounter. So it depends if they change any of the mechanics. They might do. They might water down the bosses. It might be that the stats are just lower. It could be that they change away the skills. For example, maybe the Fire Knight doesn't start at 21 on the difficulty. It goes at 18 or 15 or something of that nature. But you're still going to have to fight some of the mechanics. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense that you're just going to be fighting the same ones. So familiarize yourself with these bosses. This is the 3rd tip. go back and have a look at all the bosses. I think they've said the Shogun is not going to be there from the Raid Digest. I'm pretty sure that's what they said. But all the other bosses are fair game. All the Doom Tower bosses are probably fair game. The hard mode bosses are fair game. We could have weird combinations. If you haven't beaten Ice Golem hard yet, and you want to start thinking about it, maybe now is a good time to have a look, see what mechanics you need, see what you need to do to counter it. We will be working hard this week on hellhades.com to update all of the different sort of boss guides we can to make sure that they're all relevant and up to date so that you can approach each one if you need to learn the mechanics of a boss you haven't completed. Like, so maybe you haven't started doing Sand Devil yet. You might need to for this new encounter. Maybe you are stuck on Dark Fae and you don't really understand how it works. You might need to know it for this new encounter. So the third tip, start familiarizing yourself with all the bosses. We will have all the boss guides hopefully up to date and live on hellhades.com, which I'll see if I can put a link in the pinned comment. It might come a bit later when we finish writing them all up, because I know we have been reviewing and revising a bunch of them. But certainly it could be some interesting ones. Like, so for example, if we have to fight the Bommel boss, say with the Dark Fae, the two of them together are kind of countering what you'd want to do, because normally you really don't want to be doing any sort of turn meter control in Bommel, because that will spawn a Dread Bomb. But in Dark Fae, we absolutely want to do turn meter control. So there's going to have to be some interesting decisions we have to make. I hope Sintranos is going to be good. I really do. I was probably a bit overly negative in the last video, purely because I read probably too much into the Raid Digest. And to be fair, people called me out on it, and they probably were right that I should have stuck to my number one principle that I said before that video. Wait until they give us all the information. But when you're like waiting on tenterhooks, yeah, I've been waiting for this new major content piece for about 12 months now. We've been promised it for that long, that we're going to be doing all this stat grinding, all this awakening, all this empowerment, all this ascension stuff. It's all for content that you're going to need in the future. Well, this is it. So when I read that it wasn't going to be that hard, it kind of put a bit of a dent in my hopes. But I'm back on the positivity train. I'm back into the mind frame of maybe it is really good. Maybe it is really interesting. I'm hopeful it is. I'm preparing myself for it by just thinking, is there any gaps that I can fill in my own roster? It's very difficult for me to find a gap because I've had to do so many champion training events. I've been playing the game for 4 years. I've just have so many rank 6 champions because of these these training events that I have to do every single fusion. Heroes Path right now that we're doing just for the anniversary tokens. I'm sitting on loads of food again. So I'll probably be looking at this going, well, maybe I should upgrade that King Galkaba that I just got. Maybe I should look at another Nuka. Maybe I need a duplicate of a champion. Maybe I just unlock more Whispers. Maybe I bring more Fenax to the world, you know? So that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking for those gaps in my roster that I don't have a champion for that fills a niche. And that's my prep stage right now. I know I've got a lot of souls, but what I tend to do with souls, and this is a pro strategy, a pro tip that I would recommend you do, is I don't sell my souls instantly unless I don't need them, unless I need the coins, right? So there's no harm in having a big soul collection. Upgrading your soul collection to 190 is not too expensive. Just keep the souls. If you have rares, you might as well awaken them if they're low tiers. So you can see here I've awakened Valerie to 3. I've awakened Aveda 5 here. You might as well awaken some of them to a level. But what I have kept is my 6 stars. You just see they're sitting there. It means if I do need the coins, well, I can sell them for 400. If something comes up into my market, I need some essence, well, I've got them there that I can just sell. But there's no need to rush. There's no point burning the souls until you actually need to do them. So just keep them in your soul collection. Burn them if you need to. If you need those coins, if there's something in the soul merchant that's going to really change your account, absolutely do it. Otherwise, keep it, because you might find a specific restriction requires you to have a specific champion, and you happen to have a soul that makes it a lot easier because it needs an awakening level or something of that nature. So it's just basically be a hoarder. Welcome to the hoarding club. That's what I would recommend. So I hope that was of help to people, because I imagine people are sitting here right now thinking, well, what can I do to prepare? We don't really know like the exact things you can do because we don't have any sort of what's next detail. We only have anecdotal comments about what the content structure is going to be. We don't know any details. We can't really say, hey, 100% you should level that Ugia that we just got because he's going to be OP for XYZ, because we don't know what XYZ is, but we do know potentially that you're going to need a wide roster. It says very much in the digest, you need a big roster. So having more rank 6 champions that are covering more of roles across different factions might be very good for you. Let me know in the comments below, guys, how are you currently feeling about Sintranos with all the information, the social media posts that have gone out there? You know, like you guys, we're probably in the same boat as me. Like, where's the what's next video? We're all dying for information. I hope it comes out soon. We'll have to see what happens. Maybe by the time this video comes out, because I'm recording this on Friday at the moment, I'm trying to get ahead of myself for next week, trying to get some videos ready for you guys because I've been a bit lax the last week. Maybe it's already out, that what's next, by the time this video comes out. Who knows? But we'll have to see. But there you go, guys. Let me know in the comments below. I'm back on the positivity train. Sintranos hopefully is going to be a really good release. Let's see what happens, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.